This is Twisted Passages with award-winning author Marie Sutro. Now, let's take a deep dive into the dark world of psychological thrillers and meet the authors who created them.
Hello, and welcome to Twisted Passages. I'm your host, Marie Sutro, and today we have best-selling authors Johana Gustawsson and Thomas Enger here to talk about their new release, Sun. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary, for having us.
I am so excited to talk to you both today. This story was so amazing and so twisty. I absolutely loved it. But before I start gushing about it, can you start listeners off with an overview of what the story's about?
Yes, we can at least try. Sun tells the story of the social psychologist Carrie Voss, who, at the very start of the book, her son is being kidnapped on his 9th birthday, actually. Vanishes without a trace, and fast forward 7 years, her son Vetle is still missing. Carrie is trying to pick up the pieces of her life. She's working as a psychologist. She's specialized in human memory and body language, and she's often consulting with the police in Oslo. And she's asked to do precisely that when two teenage girls are found murdered in a small town outside of Oslo called Son, actually, which is what we're playing on in the title. And those two victims, they were her son's best friends growing up. And the third best friend of her son is the one the police arrest very quickly for that murder, with a mountain of evidence against him. But Carrie, being the expert she is on reading body language, she does believe him when he says that he's innocent and that he didn't do it. So that is a little overview of what the book is about. Carrie, being who she is, she dives into this case because she wants to figure out what's going on and if there is another killer out there.
Now, you mentioned Carrie's abilities and her professional training. What I loved about it is you elevated that to almost a superpower. And the way that she is able to specifically marry the concepts of observation of human behavior, body language, with this understanding of memory and how it functions. One of the most profound statements to me in the story is Carrie saying that we're all liars, and the first lie is the lie that we tell ourselves. Can you talk a little bit about that and the research into it and where it led you?
Yes, I will take over this question because it was during COVID times that with Thomas, we were published by the same publisher, so Orenda Books, our wonderful publisher, Karen Sullivan. I told Thomas about that aspect about lies, because we know the series Lied to Me with micro expressions, and I come from a family of psychologists. So all of that, I've been growing up, with books about Freud and about the way you behave, the way you lie despite yourself. And I said to Thomas, nothing had been done yet about the body language because it's a science. You have FBI agents using that, social psychologists, how they call themselves. And I said it would be very interesting to do a book with the main character doing that, except that we're going to have to learn the science. And we already had a Carrie of our own. And I said, well, you know what? I could do the research because I was crazy about it. And that's how we went into that. And I'm looking on that side because I have all the books about the research, which are still there. And basically, when I was diving into it and when we were, because Thomas, you read some books in Norwegian, and we saw there was something attaching to this, which was the problems of eyewitness, which was linked to memory. So we thought this is a very interesting aspect to have an expert who can work with the police, who can work with poker player or big companies to see when they're signing contracts, to see if someone is telling the truth, if he has more to offer than the amount is proposing. And to add those two aspects, basically, so the body language and the memory. And it had never been done. It was gigantic and a bit crazy project that we had. And that's how it started. And then, of course, the research, which was immense, because we had to dive into lots of books about psychology, about experts who were essentially Americans, actually, apart from one who was British, and then to read on, try to digest all this information and to make it fun, because we don't want to give a lecture. That's how basically it started. And Carrie had this ability basically to be in any situation, because now it's an investigation about a murder, but it could be really anything as she reads body language.
I thought the implications of that, if you had that superpower, how would you turn it off, and would you want it all the time? Do you want to always know if your kids or your significant other are lying to you? Sometimes maybe we're a little better off with, ignorance is bliss. So Carrie's kind of dealing with that, which becomes another pressure point in the investigation, which was so well done.
Yeah, but that is so true. We were joking because I had a babysitter, at home. And I was saying to Thomas, my God, I saw that she was basically lying to me because she had a gesture. And I said to Thomas, I wished I wouldn't have known that. And it is really the type of thing, indeed, we don't want to know. So I'm sure that for her, and it's something we will dive in, and I think into the next book that we will write, but it's that kind of pressure, because when you are with your partner, is it something that you look at, or are you oblivious, actually? Because you have love in between all this. That line, great powers come with great responsibility, it's that thing.
Can I just add one thing about the nature of this collaboration, which is quite unique in the world of literature, I think, because I'm Norwegian, Johana is French, and we're writing in English, which is our common language, and not our first language either, but it has been published first in English and now in the US as well. But like Johana said, it was quite the crazy thing to do, because we hadn't worked together before, obviously, and writing in a different language as well has its own challenges. At first, we thought that we would write this in Norwegian because Carrie Voss is Norwegian and everything is set in Norway, but it really became impossible for us to work together on the actual text in Norwegian. It was a bit of a long process for us to really kind of find the right path for us to work together. Yeah, and here we are now talking to you.
Well, it's an absolutely phenomenal story. So I am so glad that you did find that way to work together. Mm-hmm. I was wondering that, looking at both of your CVs and your history, bringing together not just different languages, but different cultural backgrounds. I know, Johana, you've moved around a little bit during your life. Mm. It just struck me as so interesting, because there is a little scene that takes place in London, and yes, it was so very fun because it's such an approachable read. You took all of these things that live in our hearts and live in our heads in the quiet moments, and you made us dig into them in the darker corners. I do want to talk about language a little bit. Thomas, you mentioned that Carrie's dealing with the fact that her son has been missing for a very long time. And there is a reference to the fact that we have words for people who experience loss. We have orphan for children who lose their parents, widow for someone who loses a spouse. But that across languages, there is really no word for a parent who loses their child. Lurking underneath the surface of this story, as Carrie's in this propulsive mystery, trying to unravel it, trying to find justice. What is it about that? Why do you suppose we don't have a word for it?
I think that the definition of it's in Sanskrit, is like against nature. And it's something, that I've been always so curious, because I live across many languages. So I'm French, so we have French at home. I speak French to my children. My husband speaks Swedish to them, and we have the English as a common language. But I have another language coming in, which is Spanish origin. And I've been very curious because, first English, then French are very rich languages. In French, with the base with Latin and Greek, we don't shy away from emotions. We know that about French people. So we tend to over-explain, we tend to over-dive into things. And I thought it was incredible that we had absolutely no word for that thing that happens. And it happens a lot. You have a lot of parents who lose their children. It was when I was doing research about another book that I realized that I said, how do you call this? And there was no word. And by doing that extensive research, I found out that there was that word, which was in Sanskrit, which is a language that we don't use anymore. So I thought that it was so important to put the finger on this and to dive into that thing. Thomas and I, we both have children. His children are bigger than mine. But for us, the fact of being parent is at the core of our life. And I think that we wanted, and tell me, Thomas, if I'm wrong, but to tackle our biggest fear.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
our biggest fear, which is lose children. After that, we tackle it in a different way for Carrie, but because the children is disappeared and then is kidnapped. So we don't know how that will go, and we don't want to say anything. I mean, we know, but we're not going to say anything. But I think, yes, it's our biggest fear. It's what you're wondering, how you can wake up the day after, and how you go on with the year, and put into parallel the fact of losing your child, because the parents of Eva and Hedda, their children are gone forever. But is the hope of finding your child better? If you talk to parents who are waiting for their child to come back, and they will tell you, I'm not sure it's better, because it hurts just as much.
I thought that was one of the very thoughtful treatments of the human condition. You do have Carrie, who's been dealing with this loss, but like you said, there is a shred of hope, even after 7 years. And here are these parents who she was close to. They were in this little community, this tight-knit community of children who are best friends, and every parent knows how that is. They kind of become extended family. And all of a sudden, 7 years later, these other parents have now fallen into this club in slightly a different way. That treatment of the very question that you just raised, Johana, would you rather have hope, or would you rather just know and have the Band-Aid ripped off right in that moment? These are things that we battle with all the time. People say, oh, well, my significant other passed when we were only 2 years into the relationship. And then someone else says, well, I was with someone for 52 years and they passed. And we kind of do that. We do this, we put things on scales, like what's better, what's worse. Why do you suppose as humans we do that?
Oh, tough question, but I think it's human nature, first of all, to try to put phrases and references to things to better understand it, maybe put it into perspective in some way.
I think that comparison is reassurance. And I think in those situations, it can be threatening most of the time, but that's what we see a lot on social media, that you find people with your passions and with your pains, and then you measure yourself towards them, because in the end you find a sort of community, and you try to say, oh, is he suffering more, is he suffering less, how it is. And it's funny, but we are beings of comparison, and we see it starts very small, better than your brother, less good in class, who has the best grade, and that's how we compare. And I think pain is the same thing. And I think that is, as Thomas was saying, I think is part of human nature. And we need to give a grade, a mark, to say, well, that's 10 or on the level of pain. And that's what they ask you very often when you're in the hospital. How much pain do you have? Which level is that? It's like, it's not enough to say that I'm in pain, So it's but it's interesting. I find it's a very interesting question indeed.
One of the other things that I thought was so very well done in this story is Carrie's team. She does have a team that she's working with, and then she does have a team that sometimes it looks like she might be working against a little bit. But at the end of the day, Carrie is always 100% sure who she's working for. Can you talk a little bit about the team you created? Her father is an amazing character. She's got some colleagues that she works with that are very, very powerful characters. Can you talk about that team and how you assembled it, and maybe why you made some of the choices to support or sometimes be antagonistic to Carrie?
Well, first of all, it's her dad that you mentioned. Hans Christian is his name. He was actually modeled unknowingly to the both of us, to Johanna's father. He very much looks like him and acts like him. I wrote those scenes and I didn't say anything to Johanna, and you were saying, Johanna, God, he sounds like my dad. Funnily enough, that was the model that I had in my mind for him. And it was such a fun character to write, because he's that kind of parent that all children and adults would like to have, that 100% supportive, so full of love and care. He's there cooking dinner for her every Sunday. He brings her food. He's always checking in on her. And he used to be the head of police in Oslo as well. So he has some contacts which might be very handy for both himself and for Carrie as this series progresses. So yeah, a lot of fun to write him. And then we have Ramona, who's the head of the investigation, both of the current murder case that has happened, and she was also the lead investigator on Vetle's disappearance 7 years ago. And Carrie had started to work with Ramona a bit before that, because of what Carrie does and helping the police. Carrie and Ramona, they have formed a really nice and warm friendship before all of this happens, and that is tested a little bit, because Carrie, she doesn't think that the police have done a good job, and she's not shying away from speaking up about it either. So that poses a strain on their relationship. But what I really like about all these characters is the fact that yes, there might be some antagonism going on between them, but they are not shouting in each other's face, which you often see on TV series, and you would feel all this antagonism. Yes, they have differences of opinion, but they always do it with care and with love towards the other one. And I really liked that. It felt refreshing to write something like that, instead of just, we need to maximize the level of conflict here. We need to have as much drama as we can possibly have. I think there's plenty of drama just as it is, we don't need to heighten it even more.
No. I think it's exactly this. What we did is that we fleshed out the character so much that after that, when we were writing the scene, we felt like we were writing about our friend, our father, our neighbors. So we didn't have to force anything, because we knew how they would react. And there is a scene where Carrie has done something that she probably shouldn't have done. And she comes back home and her father is there, and she gets really upset. But at some point she recognizes she was wrong to rush that much. And he says the sentence, and she said, I'm sorry, Daddy. And it's true. I mean, anywhere else we talked about that with Thomas, everyone would have been upset. And we said no, because her father is her rock. So at some point she will realize that she shouldn't have done this. She rushed too much. And that's what we love about Carrie, is that she's flawed. And that to me was so important. I didn't want to write a woman who was a sort of superhero in order. No, she's flawed, and she's going to set a foot, wrong, and not just once, many times.
Well, as I said, I absolutely loved this book, and I loved all the characters. So taking the scalpel to conflict and really dumping it in the places where it needed to be, but just finally carving away at those pieces. And because Carrie has this amazing father, as Thomas said, that everybody would want, you get this sense that she does have that personal growth and evolution, that she can be self-aware and say, oh yeah, this was wrong. And maybe not just her father, but life circumstances has forced her to look at things and understand what self-awareness means and what's important.
Her own body even shuts down from time to time because of the weight of everything that is going on. First of all, she has her son that is still gone, and then she's fighting for her son's best friend's freedom and justice, basically, and she has blackouts all of a sudden. She can wake up and not remember what has happened for the past 3 hours or something. And like Johana said, we wanted to create a main character that you could believe in, that would be human. Every human has flaws in some way, or sicknesses, or some kind of deficiencies in their life. And Carrie is very much a person with flaws, making the wrong choices and being a bit hot-headed at times, maybe. But that is life. That is how people are.
Even that concept of how passionate Carrie is for so many reasons, yet again, we don't have screaming matches. We don't have this. We just see her doing, not always talking, but doing. And absolutely loved it. Wonderful read from start to finish. Now, if I may ask very quickly, you both have journalism backgrounds. Obviously, there was a lot of research here, but is that something that draws you together as authors? Do you think it makes it a little bit easier or harder, or?
I think that we used to work a lot,
Yeah.
so we use of enormous workload. We don't shy away from, for example, late nights, all-nighters. We've done all this because we have solo carrier, or both of us. And for me, my children are still small. I have 3 boys, a pair of twins. So, I had many, many days which were where you struggle as a parent and you still have to work, and you just pull the hour. And I think that aspect, but also the desire to basically give the right information, meaning that all the science that we put in the book or the information is real and true. It was very important for us not to mislead the readers with wrong body language, basically, or wrong information about memories. And I think we're demanding in terms of our craft and the way that we will write and what we will put in the page. So maybe this, I don't know if you see anything else, Thomas.
I don't think the journalistic background necessarily has played a part in the actual collaboration between us. I think it's more a question of personal chemistry and that creative energy that we have when we start to talk about characters and the stories that we're working on. And of course, as well, we have the same work ethic. We have the same approach to it. Like Johana said, we don't really care if it's 10 o'clock on a Sunday night or whatever it is, or if we need to rewrite a chapter because something is not working here. And we have developed this way of hearing almost in each other's voices if the solution, if we're talking on the phone and I'm saying something, suggesting something, and I can instantly spot if Johana is not happy with that, or if she thinks that this is not working, or if she may have something else on her mind, and vice versa. And of course, none of these things beforehand before you start working. We spent a lot of time developing the story and the characters before we started to actually write. So I think we were quite confident that given that process, it lasted quite a long time, Johana, didn't it? Before we sat down to write the first chapter, and I think we were quite confident even before that okay, this is going to work because we are good at finding solutions. If we're jammed into a corner, we can just pick up the phone and talk to each other, and we will find something. We will find something that, with 4 eyes, will look much better than what led us into that corner in the first place. So I think it's more a question of personal chemistry than anything else. Creative chemistry.
Well, I can only say that readers will be so very grateful for that personal chemistry because you really created a phenomenal character, and I cannot wait to see where she takes us from here.
Well, it's going to be fun for us as well.
It's going to be fun, yeah.
Well, thank you both so much for joining me today. Before I let you go, where is the best place? You both have fans in your own right. You now have fans together, and I am sure you will have so many more fans to come. Where is the best place for fans to find you and find out about what's coming next?
Well, for me, I think it's Instagram and Facebook. I'm not on TikTok or all these other platforms, but Instagram and Facebook would be the easiest.
Yes, it's the same for me. It's the same for me, and also my website. I have a website, but Instagram is the one that I am the most, I would say. Yes.
Wonderful. Again, phenomenal story, wonderful mystery at the heart of it, propulsive, great characters. The book is Sun. Go out and get it, and you will not be disappointed. Thank you both for joining me today. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you both.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so much, Mary. Thank you.
And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Twisted Passages. We hope to see you next time.